And let me introduce the moderator of today, Jan Simons.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, the topic of this afternoon, the title of this meeting is called Back to the Future, and I think it's a very apt title for this panel, because we are looking back and looking forwards. And the title, Back to the Future, already suggests two kinds of interpretations. One is cinema is changing in such a drastic and radical manner that actually the cinema, as we see it developing right now, is becoming something completely different from the cinema as we have known it for almost a century. The other interpretation of the title, Back to the Future, is, well, cinema has gone through quite a lot of technological innovations from its beginning. Let's not forget that cinema is a very technological medium that is itself the result of many experiments, innovations, inventions in the 19th and the 20th century, some of which have long been forgotten and have ended up in the garbage bin of history. But cinema itself is a quite contingent product, result of processes of innovation, of transformation, of invention, of experimentation, etc.
With the advent of the digital, I think we are looking at a certain position of critical position that is being transformed. People are losing basically something that they thought that was defining the medium, that is the 35mm projection. But if we actually look even at sort of auteur films that are being made with the help of the new medium, I mean, Jan mentioned Dogma 95, but I could think of Sokurov's film, The Russian Ark, and also of Romer's film, L'Anglaise et le Duc, the two films that in a way use the new medium, the digital, in a very particular way. So I think that, you know, and as we can see from the panel, I think people feel rather positive about the new development rather than thinking that, you know, the era has passed.
For me, I'm the conservative of this group, so I really regret this idea that everything that has been promised by the new media and new approaches doesn't compensate for me the death of this most beautiful thing that the 20th century invented.
From my point of view, I've never seen a 35mm film in my hand. And I started now 10 years ago, and I started with video, and now I'm going very naturally to HD. And the only time I worked with 35mm was when I was producing Tropical Malady, and it was only because of the cost was lower to do it in 35mm in Thailand than to go to digital.
Since 1994, when we got democracy in South Africa, we really started to look at cinema with fresh eyes from the right at the beginning. How do we start a cinema accessible to all, to be made by anybody and available to the entire population? At the same time, the digital revolution was happening. We were not able to make films on film because it was too expensive. And we have a very strong television culture where everybody's been working on a variety of digital technology for the last 20, 25 years.
I feel the danger that in the nearest years maybe cinemas, old-time cinemas, the beautiful, incredibly important portrait of death or portrait of depth of 35mm definition of world and people and society and so on will become a matter of special shows like silent films used to be during these years. So that's a kind of tragic future perhaps of cinema.
Well, I find myself in agreement, but there's, I think it's worthwhile to reiterate that there's a kind of cycle of death and rebirth, and that there are losses and regenerations that happen. And I'd like to hope that it's not quite as going to be as isolated, that the experience of watching movies in a crowd doesn't really go away. And a festival like this is a kind of proof, even if it's an isolated yearly event. It's exciting for me to be here from New York and to see so many people coming to see movies and with great projection.
My heart beats to the beauty of film image, because it's kind of something that is defined by light, and then the electronic image is something that I kind of often find very dull. In passing, I would say that Avatar looked extremely dull. Colors were non-existent, and kind of the 3D didn't function, so it looked ugly. And the big paradox of our times is that we have all this enormous technology, and somehow we have technically poorer films than ever.
I would say that in digital things, the problem you must not forget is the people who are manipulating digital. We can't accuse digital for this kind of restoration. You can't accuse the people who have bad taste and colorize everything in a very bad way, and people who don't have the sense of history and change the colors and change things that that's a problem. And the problem is more about education and good taste than in digital technology, I think.
We are able to leapfrog many of the problems. We don't have cinemas across Africa. In South Africa, we have 700 screens. They're all in shopping malls. All the independent cinemas have died. Our television is really not interested in financing local content. So what we have is a very media-savvy population. We have kids who are making films on their cell phones at school. Not all of it good films. They're filming violence, sex, brutal things that are going on. It's a big problem in schools in South Africa at the moment. But what it is that people are embracing technology without fear and trying to interpret their own realities in a cinematic way and creating audiences for that. None of those are traditional putting in a cinema. But I think that what we are trying to work out is a voice and a language to interpret our own realities in the face of a rather large onslaught from Hollywood.
Godard had a quote, I think he's both a pessimist and a romantic when he says that it's the end of cinema, but he likes the long shadows and the walk on the beach at the end of the day, and it's like, it might be the end of an era, but that's when, that can be a beautiful time. And it can be a long time too, so it's hard to say really how final and desolate this death is going to be.